but today's lesson will only be on finding form and also to emphasize that form through application of line quality. So, I don't know, have you guys brought this little bit, this kind of object in? Roll on. Okay. Right. If you don't, you can probably borrow someone else's next to you, or sit next to someone that has one. But I will give you a little bit of a list that you can go through, and this list is going to be like your guideline for finding form on paper. So the first thing that you'll end up doing when trying to find form is you'll actually start to construct. Now, when you construct, you must recognize that there are a few steps that's very important, and if you adhere to those steps and you actually go through them, it will improve your illustration technique with quite a lot. So the first thing you would want to do is work with direction, and I'll do a breakdown of this very soon. You'll do crating. You'll work within a perspective. And I think in this instance you will work with ellipses. Right? This is step one in finding form on paper. If you follow these 4 steps, you'll probably end up kind of seeing a shape happening on your page. But the way that you actually start to define it, which is the next step, you'll make use of things like line quality. You'll also work with something like your illustrator's background. And maybe at this point in time you can also include shadow. After this, your final step would be to introduce a bit of detail. And what you'll do with that is, have you heard of something called the shadow call? Hey? Is that like a yes or a no?
No, you mentioned it last time.
Okay. Right, I'll go through that today as well. You'll start to highlight certain things in your drawing, and you'll also identify some texture. And the reason why I actually said bring this object in is because I think this is a very interesting shape to start illustrating. And one thing that you will do now is, you recognize that in first year when you were told to bring in an object, you put it on a table and you sketched it, right? What we'll do now is we'll take an object, we'll put it in front of you, and I will ask of you to illustrate it by going through these 3 main steps. So I'll give you an example on this page over here of where I'm going to go through all of this and actually break it down. You follow it, and once I'm done with it, you're going to start an exercise on your page, but I'll give you the details on that when I'm done. So what do you think is the direction of this object? If I were to do let's say, a profile drawing of it, side elevation, what is the direction of this object?
And it's like 2.
Yeah.
It's got a bit angle.
Okay, so you can recognize that there's 2 directions happening on this object, and where they change is more or less over here, where you have one form interacting with another form, right? So if I were to draw that with the style of, say, with an illustrator's technique, I'll give it direction. So it's going up, and then it's going into a different direction there. And I'm going to start creating this object in. So with creating, what you do is you give it its parameters. Like beyond this line, this object shouldn't live. So the width of my base, I'm going to draw this one in perspective. So I'm giving it a vanishing point over there. This is the width of it. This drawing will not go further than that. But I'm also giving it its width now, or its length and its width. And that is where the base of my object is going to be in. Then over here, this line I would say is going to go something like that. And this is going to be very parallel, so do another line over there. So now I've got the height of this thing, I've got this point where it intersects, and I have the base. But now I want the width of this cap over there, which I reckon will be something probably like that. So you can see that now I've boxed in that shape before even drawing it. And if I were to do something like this, I've successfully created my drawing. Also recognize and respect the length of the lines overlapping with each other. I would say if you were to pull a line to its end, go a bit further than where you think it should stop, but maybe with about a centimeter. But make that line disappear almost. Like you can see it's quite dark there and it gets thin as it goes up. That generally looks good, and it kind of disappears towards the end of your drawing. So I've given it direction, I've done the creating. This drawing is living within a perspective. The only thing left is the ellipses. Now, the areas where I will find ellipses is here on top, here where the two forms intersect, and at my base. Now, a good way for you to practice ellipses is draw a perspective, square, and basically what you want to do is you want to connect these middle points the best way possible. So within a perspective, you can actually start drawing ellipses. Now, I've done something like that here at the bottom. And I'm going to complete it by saying, well, if this is going to be this line going through the middle, then that should probably be my footprint of this drawing. So there's an ellipse living within a perspective on this drawing. And I'll do the same over here on top, where there's going to be some perspective happening of where that shape is going to be. And the same with this one over here. So I've got my ellipses down. So can you recognize something is starting to happen here? That it's very rude, but there's a sense of direction. I've boxed in the shape. All I need to do now is start to define it.